finally, we have Jaoude, our last speaker for today's session. He's open source developer relation expert from GitHub Stars program. Okay, he is now visible in our screen too. Okay, welcome, sir. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for having me as a guest at your event. I'm really excited to talk about open source today. So today, what are we going to talk about? We are going to talk about open source. What is open source? What it is not? And why you should care. And then my favorite part at the end, the Q&A. So everyone have your questions ready. I really look forward to hearing what questions you have. A really brief part about me, as mentioned, as the great introduction. Thank you very much. I am a GitHub star. So about 20 of us now have been selected out of over 44 million people on GitHub. So it's a real honor to have that position. And I want all of you to have that position as well. And we're going to dig deep into how you can do that and why you should as well. So I'm also on YouTube. I will share a link at the end if you want to follow me on YouTube, where I talk about, you guessed it, open source. I've been a full stack developer for over 15 years, and I've been in open source for over 10. And I'm still learning all the time. And I really want all of us to learn together. I believe open source is for everybody. Yes, you. And it's not just about code. I think that's really important. People get hung up on it is just about code. It's not. It's about adding value. And open source doesn't care where you're from, what time zone you're in, what you're wearing. All open source cares about is that you visit once in a while and you get involved in the communication, in the conversation, and add value. So what is open source? So open source is kind of like your social platforms like Instagram or Twitter or Facebook, but on steroids. And I think it is social coding, and that's GitHub strapline. And the more you get into it, the more you realize how true that is. On Instagram, you can like a post, you can comment. On GitHub, you can star a project, you can comment on someone's issue, comment on someone's pull request. But I've said it's on steroids, and I really meant that, because not only can you do those things, but you can also fork a project and then build your project on top of theirs, or you can contribute it back to the original project. You can't change someone's picture or someone's comment on their post on socials. On GitHub, you can do that, and that's why I think it's so powerful. And there are so many new features coming out on GitHub, which makes it even better. And I will get onto those later on. Just a few spoilers. We'll talk about GitHub Actions and GitHub discussions. Right. Okay. It is not just about code. I mentioned that. And it's about documentation as well. It's about providing value in comments and replies and getting involved in the conversation. You're going to hear me saying that a lot. And I'm going to show you some examples of what it is and what it isn't. It's little and often. You've got to remember that don't try and do an entire weekend of open source and then do nothing for 6 months. That doesn't help anyone. It's not good for your health, and it doesn't help your project. It doesn't help other projects. So it's little and often. An example I always like to give is like brushing your teeth. You brush your teeth every day. And if you look in the micro, if you look for today and you brush your teeth, it probably didn't make that much of a difference. But when you look in the macro over months and years, the improvement, the effect that it's had in your teeth is really important. And if you miss a day, your teeth aren't going to fall out or go yellow. And it's the same with open source. Don't try and do an entire weekend every 6 months. Try and do a little every day if you can, but if you can't, every few days, once a week is fine. And over the months and years, it's going to really accelerate your career, your skills, your communication skills, your networking, and how you find jobs. And we're gonna dig into that as well. So I want to mention Hacktoberfest. So let me bring up Hacktoberfest on the screen so you can see that. So yes, I'm sure you've all heard of Hacktoberfest. I'm pretty sure you have. So let's have a look. Hopefully everyone can see my screen and the size is good. This is my GitHub profile, and I'm going to talk about how you can customize your GitHub profile as well, and we'll get onto that. So Hacktoberfest. So Hacktoberfest happens every October, and it's about contributing to open source. And they count pull requests. So you need 4 pull requests, 4 valid pull requests. It's become a lot stricter this year because there's been a lot of spam. So it's important to add value to the project. And it's important to start the conversation by raising an issue. And don't forget, by raising an issue and starting that conversation, you will still get a green square. And for those of you who don't know what a green square is, it's this activity box along the bottom. So if you want a green square, which is important, it's not just about the pull request, raise an issue, start that conversation, and then have that conversation with the community and with the project maintainers so that you can check the changes you're going to make are going to be accepted, rather than you making the effort and then the project maintainer saying, no, thank you. If they say no, thank you, don't worry, it still counts as a green square, and it can still count towards Hacktoberfest as long as it isn't marked as invalid. And actually, as of this morning, Hacktoberfest have done it as an opt-in for all projects. So repositories have to opt in to be part of Hacktoberfest rather than every project being included and they opt out to, again, to reduce the spam. So this happens every year and it's really good fun. But as we say, as the TV ads in the UK say, like for Christmas, for example, a dog isn't just for Christmas, or a pet rabbit isn't just for Easter. And I believe open source is not just for October. So do keep that momentum going throughout the year, and you will be thanking me. And let me explain why. So let's explain what open source is not first. I'm trying to get all that stuff out the way. There's this Twitter account. I'm not going to say the name, but you can all read it behind me on the screen. And some of the stuff that people are contributing are like this. They just hit the keyboard and made a contribution, and they wonder why project maintainers are having less time and effort to actually help and mentor people who want to make valid contributions to their projects. I mean, here's another one, and again, an incorrect contribution. Not a very important contribution, an amazing project. There's no value in it. It doesn't add value to the project. Again, here's another one, made website in capitals. Yeah, not so useful. So I recommend getting involved in the conversation. And what I mean by that is you can join a GitHub organization if you want. This is ours behind me. You can get involved in Discord communities. So we had a talk just now about Flutter. They have a Discord, and I'm sure they have an organization. Do get involved in that conversation. People always ask, well, how do I find my first project? How do I find that great first project? You're not going to find that great first project by just waiting for it. You need to just get started. And your first few projects might be a bit kind of awkward and a bit difficult, but honestly, that's fine, because when you chat with people on socials and on GitHub and in these communities, they'll mention other projects, and then you'll find the right project where you can really kind of feel more comfortable, more relaxed, and flex your muscles. So do just get involved. The first, second, third project you contribute to doesn't mean you have to keep contributing to them forever. We've had people drop into our organization, into our projects. They've done 1 or 2 contributions, and then they found another project that's more suitable to them because of technology, because of the time zone, whatever the reason. It's fine as long as they're adding value and benefiting their skills and moving forward. Before I get on to GitHub discussions, let me come back to me for a second. So let's bring that over here. Right. Remember your questions. Don't forget, I do want to answer those at the end. They are my favorite part of the talk. So now you know what it's not. Let's talk about why you should care about it before we get into how and why and more the details of how you can contribute. Why should you get involved? Some of you might think, well, I just want to kind of chill with some friends. I want to watch some Netflix, watch some YouTube. If you're watching my channel, that's okay. No, I'm just kidding. But it will really accelerate your career massively. I can really put down my success to open source. It will help you not only with your technical skills, but it will also really help you with your communication skills, how to write better. I'm not just talking in terms of like the wording, but also what to include, how to include links, how to include images, to give context to the person reading your issue or your pull request description. I get a lot of questions when people say, oh, my issue, my pull request is getting ignored, and other people's that are newer are getting merged quicker and having that conversation faster. And when you look at the two, you can really see that one person has made an effort in giving the reviewer or the community and the maintainer context. You got to remember that these other people have looked at so many other issues and pull requests that day that they might forget what you're referring to, rather than saying, oh, as we discussed before. It's like, well, I've had so many discussions yesterday, I don't know what that means. So do use the quote blocks to include a reference to what you actually mean. Make it easier for the person to review it. And pull requests don't have to be huge. They can be really small. Actually, I prefer the smaller the better, as long as they add value. But also getting involved in open source also teach you how to collaborate. That's really, really important. You can really see some people who are new to open source, and this is normal, this is fine, but you can see when people have done it a few times that they actually get better in that they manage to break down tasks smaller so that other people can get involved in making contributions and making this feature move forward and work faster. You see people saying, oh, I'll do that huge feature, and it might take them like a week or 2 weeks to do it, but then they're blocking other people. And then by the time they actually get around to doing that piece of work, or sorry, submitting that piece of work as a pull request, there might be lots of conflicts because the project has moved along so fast. It was important to do things small and often and not keep hold of them for such a long time and get other people involved. You need to break down the features as much as you can. Open source also helps you grow your network. It really helps people recognize your name. So even if you don't contribute code to open source, getting involved in discussion, adding value to the community and project, people will recognize your GitHub name. I do recommend having all your social names, so Twitter, your Instagram, whatever you're using, your YouTube, your blog platform, and your GitHub, LinkedIn as well, all the same name. Therefore, it's really easy for people to recognize you from different platforms. It makes it so much easier. And that's really, really important. So when people do come across you, they can find you on other platforms and see what you're up to. And you may think, well, okay, that sounds great, but what else? There is so much more. I'm only scratching the surface. Things like, who likes applying for jobs and doing interviews? I know I don't. And open source has allowed me that I don't have to apply for jobs. I don't have to even do a CV. I barely do interviews because people already know my work. They already know what I'm like. They've seen my blog posts. They've seen me on YouTube. I'm not saying you have to go on YouTube or anything like that because that's not everybody, but putting yourself out there. If you're learning React, Flutter, share your learnings. If you spent, I don't know, a few hours trying to figure something out and learn it, just write a few paragraphs on a blog post or put a tweet out or whatever you want, but just share it because people will get to know you a lot better. You will grow your network without realizing. And then the jobs will come to you. Imagine waking up to, emails of people saying, "Did you come work for us? What do you charge? What's your rate? What salaries do you want?" That's such a great way and a great position to be for you to be able to select the projects and jobs that you want to work on. So this is why you must do it. And remember, it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. It does take time. I've been in open source for over 10 years and there is no fast track way to do it. If someone tries to tell you there is a quick win and fast track way to do it, they're not only lying, they're probably trying to sell you something. There isn't. You've got to just do little and often. I'm just checking the time. I might skip out a few parts. I really want time for questions. Just one last thing on this subject, when I interview people for my clients or for my projects, I'm looking at their GitHub and I'm probably not looking for what you think I'm looking for. I'm not trying to look how perfect your code is today, because if you're still learning, your code will be better even tomorrow and the day after. So what I'm actually looking for is how you communicate with people. That's really important. Some people have submitted some amazing code on GitHub. I don't know how they communicate because they don't get involved in the conversation, and communication is really important. When I hire, it's attitude and collaboration and communication before code. Really, really is. So get involved in that conversation. So I want to also look at your code, of course, but I want to look not how good it is today, but I want to look how good it was 3 months ago or a month ago and look at it today. And I want to see that today is better than it was before. It doesn't matter how good or bad it is today, as long as it's better, because I know tomorrow, next week, next month, it's going to be even better. And that's really, really important. Right, open source tips. I've mentioned it's not just about code. Get involved in the discussion, make issues to start the conversation, and you can start discussions. So there's a new feature. Let me share my screen again. And there's a new feature on GitHub that is coming out any day now. I have access to it as a GitHub star. I get lots of beta features. But one of the new features coming out is GitHub discussions. And it's a bit like issues. It's issues on steroids. It's still Markdown. Markdown is involved everywhere. So make sure you learn Markdown. There's only about 8 things you need to know about it. If we get time at the end, I can show you. And so This might look fairly familiar, similar to issues. Someone starts the conversation, or let me pick a busier one. So someone starts the conversation, and then people can put replies, just like in an issue, but then you've got nested issues. Do get involved, do give your opinion, do put reactions and get involved in this discussion. I think that is really, really important. Okay, I'm glad I showed that to you because I really want you to get involved. And the more you get involved, the less scarier it really, really is. So I mentioned about giving context, help the person understand what you're talking about. And don't go for the biggest projects, React and so forth, because they're moving so fast that if you find an issue that you like, by the time you get round to making the pull request and having a discussion to understand it, by the time you do all that, the project has moved so far forward so fast that you might end up getting conflicts. It makes it a lot more complicated and so on. So I think it's important to pick a smaller project or medium-sized project where also there are people who can maybe help you and mentor you a little bit to get involved. And later on, you can move on to the bigger project. Just get started. When people are looking at your activity on GitHub to see what you're up to and what you're doing, they're not looking how big the projects are. They're just looking that you're getting involved in open source. Also, go for inclusive projects. And what I mean by that is go for projects that welcome contributors. Some projects don't. And the way you can do this is you can look at the closed issues and closed pull requests and see how the conversations have gone. Have pull requests and issues just been closed without a comment? That's not very welcoming. It's fine for the maintainer to close the pull request, but have they put a comment to say, thank you very much for this contribution, but it's not what we wanted. These are some other items that we would like to have. Feel free to get involved in those. That's what I consider a welcoming project, rather than one that just starts closing lots of things. It's very disheartening to get that. And even for me, it is as well. So you need to be a bit thick-skinned and not worry too much, but find projects that are more welcoming. That's a really, really good tip. And another good tip I want to give you is look at to-dos in the project. So have a look and see what to-dos are left in the project. You can search for it at the top of GitHub and search a project for to-dos. These usually get forgotten, and the community and maintainers will love you if you find these and fix them and make improvements so you get to remove the to-dos. They will love you for that, and your name will definitely stand out in the project. And it's important because when I'm hiring, I look for people who have contributed to my client's projects. Let me go back to my screen and quickly show you that. So another thing you can look for as well is insights. So this is where you'll find, so when I'm hiring for my clients, I click on contributors, I have a look who the top contributors are, and those are the people I'll contact first. So if there's a company you want to work for, contribute to their project, you'll get on their radar. And when you want to contribute to a project, go on the community section on the side and see that the project has these items checked. Do they have a code of conduct? Do they have a license? Because if they filled all these items out, they're more likely to welcome contributors. So that's really, really important. If they're all unticked, then you might not want to contribute to that project just yet. Really looking, I see the chat moving. I'm really looking forward to see what the questions are. Oh, I see code spaces as well. Yes, we can talk about code spaces. I'll get to that in a second. Right. Okay. We spoke about closed issues. GitHub Actions are also often neglected. And what GitHub Actions is continuous integration. It runs every time an event happens on GitHub. Pushing to a branch, creating a pull request, raising an issue. You can have different options. And if there are commands in the project, like a linter, then, and it's not on CI, then add it to CI. And people will really welcome that because that will remove a lot of the conversation, the noisy conversation that isn't so important. So if you raise a pull request and CI fails, go have a look at what the failure is and get that fixed first before you have a conversation with the maintainers about getting your pull request merged. A lot of projects neglect that and people run that manually. So if you can add that to GitHub Actions, people will love that. And it's just a few lines of YAML. So it's really straightforward to do that. Make your profile stand out. It's really important to, when people see your contribution or see you writing on an issue, they really want to go look at your profile. And if your profile looks just boring and bland, then I recommend having a project having a profile that is important. So again, if I go back to my screen, we have this repo in our organization. And if you want to join our organization, just raise an issue on the support repo and we'll send you an invite. And we have this repo where people can submit profiles that they've seen that are all awesome, or even submit their own. And you get lots of inspiration on this. And to do this, you just need to create a repo with the same username, the same name as your username. And this is all done in Markdown. And it will help your Markdown skills. So you can see a whole load of awesome awesome GitHub profile. So make sure you've got a profile picture, make sure you've customized your profile a little bit, and don't worry about getting it perfect straight away. You can improve this over time. And other people might contribute to your project as well and make improvements. I know they've contributed to mine, and I really welcome those contributions. So definitely do that. And everyone on GitHub is actually a project maintainer as well. And you'll learn different skills by getting contributions to your project. So it is important to try and get a few contributions, because it will give you an appreciation for the other side as the maintainer, and you'll also learn different communication skills and collaboration skills. So that's really, really important. Right, just to conclude, because I know we're probably running short on time, I don't want to run over. To conclude, get involved in open source. Do get involved in the discussion. Start today. I know it's Hacktoberfest or Hacktoberfest and it's really busy, so do get involved, but continue after that goes. Do little and often. Don't try and spend a whole weekend doing it and neglect it for ages. Try and do a little every day if you can. And it might just be commenting on someone else's issue. And that is, I believe, still is a contribution. So this will allow you to get the job and money that you want and that you deserve. It will really, really well. I can't emphasize that enough. Don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel for more awesome open source and open source videos and live streams. Hit that bell button so you know when I get notified. You get notified when I go live. That's what I meant. Thank you so much for having me on as a guest. I'm going to jump straight into these questions. Let's have a look. So I did see code spaces mentioned. So code spaces allows you to develop in the browser. So if you haven't got a powerful computer, if you can't run VS Code and Docker and all these other fancy features, you can actually just do it in the browser. It's VS Code in the browser. And if you actually prefer to work locally, you can run VS Code locally and it connects to your development environment on GitHub. And it actually is Docker behind it. So if you do want a database like Mongo, etc., you can just put a Docker file and configure it to do things like that. And if you don't configure it, it will pick up what type of project it is and try and create that for you. And it's very impressive to do that. Okay, let's have a look. What other questions have we got? If anyone wants to jump in with questions, let me know. But being a rookie programmer, can I contribute to open source? Yes, great question. Actually, you can add so much value being new to tech or new to programming because you've got a fresh pair of eyes. When you have a project that say got, I don't know, 5, 10 people on it that are all super experienced, focusing on that project for a long time, they miss so much. The barrier to entry in that project gets higher and higher and higher. So you joining that project, and hopefully they're inclusive and they want you to join, then you can add so much value by saying, well, in your quick start, for example, you've mentioned step 1, run this command, step 2, run this command, step 3, do this. But I don't have that. Oh, there's a step 2B that we're missing, right? We just made the assumption that everyone would know that. So you can add so much value. So yes, definitely get involved. And we have an Eddie bot running in our Discord. There's an open source project, and people getting involved in that has really made us realize how much better we can make it. So one example is we're moving from Firebase, Firestore database, to Mongo, because for people to set that up, it's quite painful. So we're actually going to remove that over the next few weeks. And that really gives us feedback, so adds us so much value. The main question is how to find projects that I'm familiar with, someone asks. You can find projects that your friends are contributing to, people are tweeting on socials, projects that you probably use already, like if you're using a library or a framework, you're familiar with those projects, you're familiar with those documentations. Then any dependencies that you've got, if you're using JavaScript, for example, like in your package.json, you're familiar with those projects, contribute to those projects, and I'm sure you can add improvements to those. And what else? Let me think. You can also search for good first issue on GitHub. If you go to the top and search, you can filter by the labels, good first issue, Hacktoberfest, etc. And you can even filter by the language as well. So if you're specifically looking for JavaScript or Flutter, you can specifically filter for languages that you want as well. What's the strategy for contributing to open source and finding a repo? I think I just covered that. If not, we'll go back to that at the end again if there's more time. Code spaces we mentioned. Are there any disadvantages of open source, if any? There must be disadvantages because there are pros and cons to everything. I can't think of any disadvantages. I've only had positives from it. It does take time. It's not something that is easy. That's why a lot of people don't do it. But the value, I mean, it's like going to the gym. I don't know, some people say they're involved in open source. It's like going to the gym. It's like going to sit in the gym in the corner and watch people exercise. You're not going to get fit and you're not going to get a six pack by watching people do sit-ups. You have to do the sit-ups and you'll do them probably badly at the beginning. And then you'll get better and better at doing them. And everything just gets easier. Doing more sit-ups just gets easier and easier. So get involved. It is hard at the beginning, but do get involved. Disadvantages, yes. So I can't think of any. If anyone has any disadvantages, let me know. I'd be interested to hear what they are. How to begin projects, mediocre projects to work on for beginners. Again, look for projects that are inclusive, I think. Find issues and pull requests that have been closed. Check that people are welcoming and want to help you. People are tweeting saying, we're mentoring people on our projects if you want to get involved in technologies X, Y, and Z. It's good once you get involved more and look at some of the discussions and comments on GitHub, you will find other projects a lot easier. I suppose it's like being at home and thinking, what shall I eat for dinner? What shall I go buy? It's really hard to think. If you go to the supermarket, go to the shop, you'll see things and you'll get ideas. So you need to go there and you need to get ideas for things like that. Are open source software more valuable to hacking than other security exploits? Most open source projects are actually more secure than closed source because you've got people giving feedback. Closed source is not more secure because it's more secure. People think it's more secure because of obfuscation, as in because you can't see it. It doesn't make it any more secure. So open source, people can give feedback and show improvement. I mean, there are bounties out there that Mozilla do, for example, and other places. I think Facebook is a big one as well. Whereas if you find security flaws in their project, the harder and the more valuable the security flaw that you found, they'll pay you for it. I remember, I think it was a young child of like, I don't know, 13, 14, who got paid like $100,000 because they found a really obscure, complex and valuable security flaw and they got paid for it. So yeah, I think they're more important. All my projects are open source first. And I rarely close source a project. And if you think, oh, but I want to put passwords and secret information in there, I should make it closed source. There's no reason to make the project closed source. Even for my clients that have closed source projects, we never, ever put anything private in the repository. You've got GitHub secrets for that, where you can put it in and use it on GitHub Actions, etc., and so on. How do you balance working on your projects, say paid work, working on open source project? That's a really great question. Love that question. It is hard. And paid projects, client work, your job, etc. You got to pay your bills, support your family, save money, whatever it is. That is important. But I find doing open source work is kind of like a break, and it allows me to do things that I really want to do. And then over time, I get more money in my job. So it actually kind of is an investment in myself, because then in future work, I can then charge more money and I get more of more authority in the kind of technology space, if that makes sense. I don't know if that's the right word, but hopefully you all understand what I mean. But it is hard to balance. Don't burn out. Do have a balance. I've been there. I've burnt out. I've got imposter syndrome before, and it's not a good place to be. So do find that balance. Again, think of brushing your teeth little and often. Maybe one day you find an issue, you find a project that you're looking for. The next day you maybe raise an issue or comment on an issue. Then the next day you maybe make the contribution, or you plan the contribution and you move it. Just spread it out. Could you tell us the significance of licensing in open source? That's often overlooked. Yes, so licensing is often overlooked, and GitHub have created this great website called Choose a License, and they give you the overview of the license, and you can dig deeper into the ones you want. They give you also project examples of using which projects use different licenses, which ones are more permissive, which ones are more strict, etc. So I would definitely check the licensing before you contribute. Most of them, a lot of them are quite open, which is really good. And then for your projects, do put a license, because some people won't contribute to a project if there isn't a license. So do put an open source license, and it's very easy to do. In that insights page, you can click on code of conduct, add, and it'll give you some open source code of conducts that you can add. same with the licensing. Do have a look at those. It is a complex area, definitely. Okay, could you share your experience of how you got into open source in short? Yes, I know I've been talking for way too long. You'll see this on my live streams on YouTube. I say, oh, I'll do half an hour live stream, and we carry on chatting for 2 hours because of awesome questions in the community. So I got into open source actually, yeah, just over 10 years ago by, like most people, probably like everybody, by making a typo fix. And it was very hard back then. We didn't have GitHub. We had to get access to private repositories in SVN. There was no Git. And then we had to sign all these forms and read through pages and pages of what we had to sign, which were things like, you know, your work, you'll not charge for it, etc. All these SLAs, I can't think of the name, but they had all these different things and it was awful. And I think I made, it took me ages to make that typo contribution because I didn't want to read these like 20 pages of like documents and so forth. And then I made more kind of typo contributions. And then I actually started making code contributions by improving test code coverage. And then by doing test code coverage, the people in the project started including me more and tagging me more on not on GitHub, but what we had equivalent back then, SVN and IRC, and getting involved in the conversation. And that's when I started discovering code improvements that I could make. And as I used the project, back then it was a Zen framework project for PHP. Like I said, it's going back over 10 years. I made these code contributions because I was using the project and I was like, oh, it'd be really nice if I could have this feature, or, oh, there's a little bit of bug, let me do this. And then it snowballed from there. Then I went into Java projects and JavaScript projects, TypeScript projects, and it just improved from there. So I highly recommend just getting started. You will not stay on that specific project for a long time because I'm sure you'll find many others that will spark your interest. Hopefully that was a short intro of how I got into open source. I'll talk forever. I know I've been talking for way too long. I think I've done like 30 minutes, I think. But I hope that was useful to you all. If you want me to drop any links in the chat, let me know and I can drop some links in the chat. I can carry on talking if no one else wants to talk. But thank you so much for having me here as a guest on your event. It's awesome. Yep, I can share my link to my YouTube channel. Sure. And then from that, you better get our Discord link if you want to join the conversation, our GitHub organization, and our projects from there. So I'll share the organization for you. Thank you again. Awesome. I'll leave you all in peace.
Thank you, Eddie. It was really insightful of you. It was really amazing to hear from you, and I think myself and a lot of all participants learned a lot from you. We hope to have interaction in your YouTube channel and your Discord server in the future as well. Thank you for being here, and thank you all of you for participating in our Hacktoberfest meetup. We hope that you will get into open source and you learned something today. Thank you everyone. It was really amazing to have you. Now I think I'll end the session. Bye bye everyone. Take care. Happy Hacktoberfest.